dollars and that they're the worst foods ever. Her family lives in a funeral home. If she were brand loyal, she'd be brand loyal to Burt's Bees, and once rode a donkey up a volcano in the Philippines and shot a golf ball into it. And then the next year, it erupted. Was it due to her golf ball? Maybe. Well, I don't know. So I'd like to talk about my friend and teammate, Brittany Shear.
Burt's Bees and talking always. Hi, everybody. Hi. We are going to talk, I'm going to be giving a talk on detachment and fasting and how to engage in mission through both of those things. And yeah, let's just open it up in a prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Our Lady of Perpetual Help, pray for us. In the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. This is on page 16 of your formation curriculum, so go ahead and open up to that. And we are going to do a little activity later, and feel free to write in the margins of that, and then you'll have it for when you prep for this talk later. This talk is given by either you or one of your leaders on your trip at orientation. So this is kind of like our orientation evening, as Ryan mentioned earlier, and so that is where this is coming from. The purpose of this talk, you'll see on page 16, is for students to know what detachment and fasting are and why they are so crucial to our mission trip. And the goal is for those students to understand the fasts that we are going to be participating in and the why behind them. We don't just want them to see these fasts as a list of rules that we're giving them on night one, but instead as something that they can engage in and choose for themselves. So we'll go into that in a little bit. Yeah, we just really want them to desire these fasts. So from now on, I want you to sit back and just enter into this talk as if you are a student on a mission trip, night one, hearing this talk for the first time. So hello, I'm going to be giving you a talk on detachment, fasting, and engaging in mission. First, we're going to do a quick activity, so pull out a piece of paper and a pen. And I'm going to read you a couple of questions, and I just want you to start jotting down the first things that come to mind. What do you think are the hardest things for a college student to give up or detach from? What are the hardest things for you personally to detach from? So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds. I'm going to repeat those questions and just start jotting down a list. What do you think are the hardest things for a college student to give up or detach from? And what are the hardest things for you personally to detach from? Okay, if you just want to start shouting out a few of those detachments that you have written down, whoever wants to start, go for it. Music. Music.
Knowing what's going on.
Knowing what's going on. Social media problems. Phones. Problems too, probably. Problems in your life. Anything else? Schedule. Homework, classes, maybe alcohol.
Sleeping in.
Sleep in general. Yeah, this is a great start. You can put your list aside for now and we'll come back to this later. So I want to start off with an intro, an overview of what detachment is and why we encourage it on mission. We are all here on mission to know Christ and to make him known. And in order to fully give of ourselves as we serve, we need to properly dispose ourselves to mission through detachment and fasting, and have a game plan for how we're going to do that during our time on the ground. I'm going to read an excerpt on detachment from Father Jacques Philippe. We cannot receive the motions of the Holy Spirit if we are rigidly attached to our possessions, our ideas, or our point of view. To allow ourselves to be led by the Spirit of God, we need great compliance and adaptability, and we can acquire these things little by little by practicing detachment. Detachment means if some particular thing or habit or relationship or personal plan is taken from us, we don't make a drama out of it, being deprived of it. I'm going to repeat that. Detachment means if some particular thing or habit or relationship or personal plan is taken from us, we don't make a drama out of being deprived of it. So thinking about some of your prized possessions, maybe it's your best friend, sister, mom, one of these attachments that you wrote on your list, are we detached enough from something to let it go if the Lord takes it from us? This clearly is not comfortable. So why do we need to detach? So we said that we're all here to know Christ and to make him known. But in order to let him in more to our hearts so that we in turn can fully pour out him to others around us, we must make room for him to come in. If we think about detachment as a letting go, as an emptying out, when something is empty, then it has more space for something else to come in and fill it up. So when we empty our hearts of the attachments that we have, we're allowing the space for the Lord to come in and fill us up. This seems simple. I was praying about this when I was writing this talk, and yeah, it seems simple, but I see myself day after day after day continuing to fill my life with distractions that are keeping me from not only the Lord, but people around me as well. And keeping me from experiencing the Lord in full in that relationship and the full relationship of those in my life. And I would bet money that I'm not the only one in this room that feels that way. So I have found in my own life that there is a true freedom in detachment, a freedom that allows us to more fully experience God's presence and love, and identify ways that he might be inviting us to deepen our relationship with, again, him, but also others in our lives. By eliminating these things from our lives that might be distracting us from hearing his voice, it allows him to come in and for us to experience his love and maybe healing that he wants to show us and for us to experience. If you think about sitting at home in your living room, maybe you're sitting on your phone and either your mom or your roommate walks behind you and starts talking to you. You might hear like 30% of what they're saying. Just imagine like the Lord, right? Like I'm sitting here with all these distractions in my life, and the Lord walks behind me and is trying to tell me something, and I can't hear it because I'm too distracted. And if you sit with that for a while, I would sit with that for a while. So we can see how these distractions keep us from Christ in our lives sometimes. But how can detaching from these distractions allow us to fully experience others around us? So this week in particular, we are on a mission trip. And you've all worked really hard to be here, but so has the person next to you. And if one individual chooses to not enter into some of these fasts that I'm going to offer, that's not only going to distract from your time on mission, but also could distract your neighbor from this week as well. So you might be thinking, wow, this would be really great, lady, if I could detach from all these things that I just wrote on a list. But how could I possibly tackle this? Yeah, and again, I'm going to be honest, I don't have a formula. I struggle with this every day, but I'm constantly striving and trying to work on ridding my life of these detachments and attachments. And I just pray that you will be able to experience this freedom from detachment, or from attachments, with Jesus by your side. So I'm going to walk you through some practical steps on how to do this week. So our mission is going to naturally be set up for some of these detachments. But you have to make the choice to either just let them happen to you and be an annoyance, or you can embrace them and allow Christ to transform your heart through them. So first we have involuntary detachments. These are things that are out of our control. We're in a foreign land. Yes, we are in the United States, but this is a different place for most of us than where we live. Different environment, we are in a different schedule. You might be sleeping 2 beds away from somebody that you met 3 hours ago. You're eating different food than what you're used to. These are things that are out of your control. And then we have voluntary detachments. These are detachments that can be accepted in order to increase the opportunity for authentic encounter with God and with your neighbor. On this mission, the 3 voluntary detachments that I am going to offer you are the 3 fasts. So the media fast, the dating fast, and the alcohol fast. We're going to go into these 3 fasts more in depth of what they look like. But first, I would like you to raise your hand if you want to be more attached to your phone after this week. Great, no one. Okay. Yeah, you can see our phones are a good in sorts of ways, right? But they often serve as an escape, and they prevent us from living in reality. And we know that the Lord dwells in reality, and so we want to be there as well. So this week, we are going to ask you to take a step back from your phones. This includes removing distractions such as social media, talking to family and friends back home, apps, etc. But it'll also help us to live in solidarity with the poor around us. Second is the dating fast. In order to build up an authentic culture of brotherhood and sisterhood, we ask that you refrain from flirtatious behavior, one-on-one time with those of the opposite sex, or entertaining the idea of romantic interests. Dating on mission can put a strain on a team, a whole mission team. And if a romance develops within with another member of this group, we just trust that if it's meant to be, it's going to last after this week. The fast also applies as well as within our own group to the locals. Flirting with locals can lead to long-term damage with Focus Mission's relationship with our hosts on the ground, and it can really hurt the people that we're leaving behind. And third is the alcohol fast. We will not be drinking alcohol on this mission trip. Alcohol is a created good, and Focus recognizes it as such. It is a luxury that most of the world cannot afford, but yet abuses heavily. This includes any opportunity for alcohol on an international flight or other travel plans. Do not go out and buy alcohol on your own. And while it may be legal for you to purchase and possess alcohol in the country that you're serving or in the airport, be aware that when you land back in the United States, as soon as you land, the drinking age of 21 will immediately be applied. Okay, so after these 3 fasts, I want you to grab your lists again of attachments. We're going to go back through these. So thinking about the involuntary detachment as well as the voluntary detachment that you're going to experience this week on mission, I want you to just take a second and go through your list of attachments and circle each one that you will have an opportunity this week to detach from. So you're going to circle your attachments that through this mission trip you will be able to detach from. Go ahead. hand if you circled less than 50% of your list. Great. Keep your hands up. Raise your hand if you have about 50 to 75% circled. Raise your hand if you've circled almost 100% of your list. Great. Great. Yeah, so as you can see, this week, we will have the opportunity to detach from a lot of these attachments that we have back home. And naming these attachments is often the hardest part, and you've already done that. So I would suggest taking this list to prayer, taking it to the Lord each day, and asking Him to put you in a circumstance that is going to help you detach from these attachments that you have in your life. And we want this mission trip to be a launching pad to going home. So we don't want to just give these things up for a week, but we want it to be an opportunity to take it into your life back home too. Okay. Now we are going to talk about how we can put this detachment and fasting into practice while we're on the ground to help us engage in the mission that we're living each day more fully. So during mission, we are each going to encounter hardship and difficulty to some degree. You may be tempted to check out or begin a mental countdown to when you're back home. I have, on a personal note, I've had bronchitis and sore throats, and I've been sick the last month. And each day I have to get up and choose to be present that day. Because easily I can want this week to be over so that I can go home and rest. But then I'm going to miss what the Lord has in store if I'm not here and I'm not present. And so just, allowing these things to help us be engaged each day and present. So I'm going to share 4 ways with you to help you stay more engaged on mission. If we're striving to live these out in the good times and in the bad times, we're going to create a space for the Lord to bring or to bless our mission more abundantly. So the first is valuing relationship over efficiency. So this means valuing the people that we encounter more than the project that we are trying to accomplish. So I'm going to give you an example of a time I was on a mission trip in Peru, and in Peru we build staircases. And there were 2 men in our group that were really fast and they could do the concrete, and so they came to us as missionaries and said, hey, the whole group is working on this one staircase with the neighbors, the vecinos that live there. But we could go over to this other staircase just a little bit away, and we could do this one by ourselves and get a second one done, and kind of like killing 2 birds with 1 stone, right? And we had to have a conversation about, yes, you could maybe build another staircase, but you would be over there by yourself and not encountering the locals, not having those conversations. And that's why we're there. We might build a staircase, yes. We might build some latrines, yes. Bringing water to a city, but we're there to encounter the locals, for us to encounter Christ in them, and for them to encounter Christ in us. So we don't want to spend all of our time accomplishing tasks and not encountering people. The second one is being liquid. It's not enough just to be flexible, but to be liquid. So we are going to ask you to enter into full liquidity this week. It's okay if something goes wrong. We should actually expect something to go wrong. It's actually when something goes wrong, we trust that it was the Lord moving us, right? Again, another example, my first year I went to Peru on a mission trip and COVID happened. Last year I was in Colorado and this record-breaking snowstorm happened and we spent the last 3 days in a hotel. But both of those experiences could have ruined the entire week if we let it. But instead we entered into, okay, Jesus, you clearly wanted us to spend 3 days in the hotel. How can we make this still mission? So just being liquid. 3 is having a positive attitude. We all know that Debbie Downer that can be in a room, in a classroom, on a trip. And we also know that person that is always positive and always smiling and always going. And we just, we can choose to react, or we can choose to respond rather than react when something goes wrong. And this complaining comes into this, right? We are just a culture of complaining. This is not an official fast, but I would offer a fast of complaining this week, and it can truly transform this trip for you and those around you as well. And then number 4 is living in solidarity. So very few are called to live in poverty, but we can all uplift their dignity by sharing a meal, having a good conversation, and helping meet their material needs. Again, I'm going to go back to Peru. So I know 0 Spanish. I can tell you baño, so I can find a bathroom, but like 0 Spanish. But in Peru, each day we had an opportunity to eat lunch with the local vecinos, and they only speak Spanish. And I would sit next to them and smile, because that's all that I could offer them. But that was allowing me to live in solidarity with them instead of just going and sitting with my friend, but sitting with a local. We cannot alleviate everyone's suffering, but we can choose to accompany the poor and the vulnerable. So that was a ton of information. I'm going to do just a few brief overview, key takeaways. So these media, dating, and alcohol fasts aren't meant to restrict us, but instead are meant to open us to a greater invitation to serve. By saying yes to these fasts, we can give a greater yes on the ground to both our team and the people around us that we're serving. By entering into the spirit of detachment with conviction, you will be able to more effectively incorporate these 4 key principles of engaging in mission. So again, those were valuing relationships over efficiency, being liquid, having a positive attitude, and living in solidarity. And lastly, these fasts are not meant to restrict you. They're not meant to be this list of rules, but I want you to choose to embrace them this week and just see what the Lord can do in your hearts. Thank you. So right there I would have prayed. That would have been the end of the talk. Now we're back at MDLS. Okay, so first, if you look again on page 16, it's kind of a layout. I just want you're going to hear this over and over this week, but these talks are not meant to be read by the book. We want you to take them and to incorporate your own stories. We want you to incorporate your own self, your own prayer, and your own heart into them. You know your students, you know your leaders. Putting that into your talk. But the 4 main pieces that you're going to walk through are introduction, which is where I gave the activity. I did the activity with the list of attachments, starting with an overview of detachment before we dove deeper into it. And then the second key point is detachment. So first I gave the why, and then I gave the how, which goes into the dating fast, media fast, alcohol fast. I said this in the talk multiple times, but just driving home the 2 points that, 1, we don't want these to be a list of rules. We want them to embrace them, to choose them for themselves, and to want them, right? Yes. And then when you guys are mainly domestic trips, right? Which makes the phone fast, in my experience, a lot harder. So I think just praying through that, talking to your leaders about that ahead of time, of like, how are you going to check up on that? How are you going to maybe hit that home a little bit harder for your students? And I think just like not playing dumb, right? And being like, we know that this is a temptation. We know that this is going to be a lot harder, but challenging them. That would be my advice. And then the 4 ways of staying engaged on mission. I think I found that, like, as missionaries, right, we are on campus, and it is chaos. I've lived it. I've been there. but we trust the Lord, and so something happens, and we know that it was supposed to happen. And so just taking these 4 ways of engaging into mission and taking your experience as an on-campus missionary and putting that experience onto your students so that they can then experience the week how you would experience campus in a semester, if that makes sense. And then in conclusion, I went over the things that you want them to take away, because it's after dinner, they've been traveling all day, and you want them to remember the things that you want them to remember. Okay, great.